This video is part 2 of my $100 challenge to make over my daughter's bedroom, and today we're going to work on this mural. My name is Sarah, and I like to take things that are ugly and beat up or pulled out of the trash and make them beautiful again. Welcome to my channel. While the mural can hang like this just by itself, and that was my original intent, I decided, since we're making over her room, to go ahead and make this look like a picture window and build a frame for it. So even though I have the measurements from the website, I went ahead and measured the size anyway, just to make sure when I was buying the trim pieces, I got the right lengths and the right amount. And this was about 4 feet by 5 feet roughly, so I bought one 10-foot section and 2 7-feet sections so that I would have room for angles and whatnot. So the 2 7-feet sections were my 2 5-foot sides, and then the 1 10-foot section divided to do my 2 4-feet sections. Now, I just went to my hardware store. I did look at the MDF and the PVC trim pieces because they are a little cheaper, but I was concerned that they would be too wobbly. So I ended up choosing primed pine. That was the next cheapest, and I'm gonna paint it, so I did not need to buy any nice wood, but I felt like it was stable enough. However, I made sure that each piece laid flat. Once I got these home, I'm ready to cut my frame, but I had to figure out the right measurements and angles. So because I want to make a 90-degree angle, I'm putting my miter saw at a 45-degree angle. However, I had to rotate which direction the angle went depending on the end. So I started off just giving myself a fresh 45-degree angle at one end, and then from there measured out the length, either my 4-foot or my 5-foot length, and I went in the middle of that piece of wood so that my fabric would land about in the middle when I'm stapling it. I didn't want it at the very edge, the bottom edge, and I didn't want it at the very top edge. I wanted it to land in the middle. Because I have those corner brackets, I need to screw in at the top edge. So I measured out in the middle, and then I didn't even bother with the line because this automatically gives a shadow for the 45-degree angle. And I just cut with the angle on that middle point, and it worked out. And once I had one piece cut, I could use that as a template for the next. And I had, 2 pieces of each size. So it worked out. The angles worked. I'd never done something like this. I was really excited to see this come together. And once I got those cut, I could lay it out, and I saw, okay, it all fit. It's a nice square. We're good to go. I was super excited. I've never done something like this before. But I've seen it in videos, so right, when you see it in a video, they make it look easy. Surely I can repeat this. And this project is easy. You can do it if you have these tools or something similar. So for the corners, I made sure to buy these corner L brackets. They're like flat L brackets because the glue alone is not going to hold it. But I wanted these L brackets, and I had to make sure that, one, I didn't buy the thinnest trim pieces. I needed it to be a little thicker for these screws, and I was still concerned that the screws that came with the packet were too long. So I found some of my own screws that were shorter, as many as I could find. I couldn't find enough to replace all of them. And I also drilled pilot holes because I was concerned about splitting this wood, even though these screws are so tiny. Maybe you don't have to, maybe you do. I don't know. I'm making this up as I go along. I've seen people do it, but I didn't remember all the details. Between the screws and the glue, this should hold just fine. And once I was satisfied with how tight the corner was, I dabbed up the glue and let this dry. My daughter came in and she helped me fill the cracks with wood filler, and we let that dry before it was time to paint. I put 1 coat of primer on this, and I'm so glad I did because it was raw wood. It soaked up a lot of that primer. I was kind of surprised at how much primer it went through. I maybe should have sanded this first. It didn't cross my mind. And once the primer was on, it was pretty rough. So I did go back with a 220 grit sandpaper and just gently tried to sand everything down. And there's a lot of curves here, so I didn't want to distress it and pull the paint off. So I gently sanded down as much as I could to get it a little more smooth. I wasn't super concerned about it. I didn't feel like this had to be perfect. I don't know. I thought it'll be fine. Here you can see I did have one screw kind of pop through a little bit, but it didn't fully come exposed, so that was okay. I mean, it's a bummer. I tried my best to not have it pop through, but I can work with a little bump. I think 2 corners had these little itty tiny bumps. After sanding, I got my leaf blower out and blew all the dust off, and I like this over using a towel because my towels end up leaving lint on my projects, but this isn't foolproof. A towel or a tack cloth would be ideal over just a leaf blower, but still, it's kind of fun. So then I came in and gave the whole piece 1 coat of paint, and I only did 1 coat. I didn't bother with a second coat because the primer gave it was fine, I thought. And you can see here I'm using a plastic grocery bag on my paint tray, and I've figured out how to make this work without it being too much of a headache. If you've not tried it, I do really appreciate the time it saves in cleanup. However, in my next video, the part 3 of her room makeover, I will tell you about a problem I incurred with this that was a little bit disappointing. But anyway, before hanging the mural onto the frame, I wanted to iron it. I kept this at a lower setting, probably in the middle on my iron, because I didn't want to mess anything up, and it seemed to be a hot enough temperature to get the wrinkles out pretty good. Now, when it was time to staple it on, I laid it out as best I could across the whole piece and started at one corner and stapled down a side, and it worked out. You know, I talked about wanting it to come about to the middle of the width of the wood, and it worked out pretty good. Worked down one side, and then kind of took turns going back and forth to work down the side, so that way I made sure it didn't become wonky and get pulled to one corner or anything, and just kind of slowly worked my way down and got it stapled in. Now, I was by myself in hanging this, so I had to get creative in figuring out where to hang it. So I videotaped myself holding it and decided I liked it at the higher spot, which my daughter had said earlier that she liked it there too. In order to stay within $100, I decided not to buy new hardware to hang this, and I found in my stash of stuff 1 picture hanging thing. I would have preferred 2, and then I could have found the studs and hung it on studs, but I just had the 1, so I centered it and put it in the middle of my frame, and then added the Velcro sticky wall hanging things, and I figured those don't hold things up in my opinion, but with the nails holding it on the wall, the sticky stuff will hold it steady, so it should be solid. I did try to find a stud, hoping it would be in the center of where I needed to work, but it did not work out that way. So instead, I found the center of the wall and marked that, then found out how far away from the ceiling I needed to hang this, and marked in the center where my 2 nails needed to go to be evenly spaced for my picture hanging piece, and made sure I made those dots nice and level, and then nailed those 2 nails in, and I nailed them in at an angle, hoping that since I don't have these in a stud, that would hold it. Again, this is really light. I'm not concerned about that. I removed the backing on each of the Velcro sticky things and very gently lifted this up and got it level on the nails without it getting stuck to the wall yet. It was a little tricky, and then once I was satisfied with it being level, I then pressed at each point of the Velcro holds and held it for about 30 seconds to make sure this would not be moving and be pretty solid. And that finishes this project. We are done. It is hung, and my daughter loved it. Now, watching this, you get to see a little sneak peek of the changes I'm making in her room, but my next video will be the final and 3rd part of this series, and I will show you the full room and the full makeover and breakdown of how I did with staying in my $100 budget. So you won't want to miss that. But thank you for watching this video, and we'll catch you in the next one.